Sojourn is still meta, Doomfist got absolutely destroyed, hero picks and bans, the World Cup finally returning, and Roadhog losing his one shot. There's a ton we gotta talk about, so in this news roundup, we're gonna break it all down so you know everything that's popping in Overwatch right now, and we're gonna get right in, but please smash that like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and let's get started. Now, in a very surprising bit of news, after a 3-year hiatus, the World Cup is actually returning to Overwatch. It will announce 36 countries and regions, and we're going to find exactly who the best team is at Overwatch in the entire world. And we're not going to be surprised at all when it turns out to be Korea. But I'm incredibly excited to see some high-level Overwatch on a big stage. And especially when the Overwatch League is like on its last leg, if I'm being honest. This is going to be a really sick event, and I'm excited at the very least. But Evan, let me know how you feel about the World Cup and Overwatch esports as a whole. Next up, we do gotta talk about hero picks and bans. There's been an outcry of the community from different streamers talking about hero picks and bans, like Surefour that said this on Twitter. Overwatch will never be able to break from stagnating metas until there is a ban system implemented in ranked. Sojourn, the bane of everyone's existence, everyone bans her constantly, no more Sojourn. Can we just start off with one ban in a veto system? Now, I previously did a video where I talked about hero bans in details, and one of the biggest complaints about the hero ban system is that having just a certain amount of bans is just going to make so whatever is the meta character always a permaban, and then the secondary meta is going to form underneath that, right? Like, imagine a one ban system in the current meta or over the season 1 meta, and either Zarya would always get banned or Sojourn after the fact would always get banned, and that would kind of just create the secondary meta underneath. And then other criticisms are simply due to the fact that there's not enough characters to justify a legitimate picks and ban system. But I've seen other arguments to say, one, you could put it in place at the very least to have a band-aid fix for truly broken metas at least, and then when metas are actually properly balanced, then the picks and bans get a little bit more interesting. So at its worst, it's like a band-aid fix towards Blizzard's poor balance, and at its best, it could actually be something that keeps the games pretty interesting in a more balanced state. And the second argument I've seen is there could be a more advanced picks and ban system where you could hypothetically force each team to not be able to play the same characters. So if a character was banned from one team, the other team could still play it, but then the team that got first banned could ban two, or something like that, something along those lines. And we could have a situation where everyone would have to be playing different characters in different metas, and even if there's a second underlying meta, it would never be a mirror meta, which makes things a little bit more interesting. I think there's a lot of ways you could go about it, and I could definitely see the pros and cons, but ultimately I want to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about picks or bans? Do you agree with Surefour here? And if you could implement something, what would it be and why? Let me know down below. Now, the next news story that we definitely got to talk about is about the current state of Doomfist. A huge Reddit thread blew up on the Overwatch Reddit that basically talks about how Doomfist is now useless or garbage and Roadhog is just remaining unnerved. Now, we do know that Roadhog is in a state where he can't currently be hotfixed, and especially with him being at the top of the meta and Doomfist only having a small amount of time to shine, it definitely leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Of course, we even have top Doomfist players like Zebra putting this on Twitter saying, wait, why is Doom worse than he was before buffs? Hello, Blizzard. And while Karku chimed in and said, is the 4-second cooldown nerf on Punch that bad? I thought he'd still be better than the Season 1 version. Zebra responded saying, empowered Punch was better in Season 1. Now it's worse not only because it doesn't stun for as long, but also because it's harder to get. The 1-second increase in the Punch cooldown may not seem that bad, but it's a big part of his mobility, and it's also the way he counterplays most abilities. Now, there's two big arguments being made. One, Doomfist's mobility should not be touched, as that's the primary way to express your skill, and it's the primary strength of Doomfist. And if you're going to remove something, don't nerf his mobility. And the second argument I'm seeing being made is players really want Doomfist to have a very, very high skill ceiling and have Doomfist scale appropriately to that power level. That's why you have streamers like Get Quaked On really vying for Doomfist techs. You can reduce the overall power of the character in the average person's hands, but give Doomfist more power when mastered and advanced knowledge is created in the character. This would mean that Doomfist wouldn't dominate most ranks until players got really good with Doomfist, but if you took the time to master Doomfist and you actually put in the work, you could become an absolute freak with the character. So I can understand all the arguments, but I really want to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about Doomfist and his current state? Do you think people in the community are just overblowing how bad Doomfist actually is? I pass the question off to you. How do you feel about Doom? Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is the fact that Sojourn still might be the best DPS in the game, at least according to a lot of streamers and currently pros right now. And we have people like Samito on Twitter talking about how the character is still very, very strong at high ranks of play when people have mastered the ability to actually hit those real shots, and that low-ranked players are actually the real target of these nerfs, and they're hurt far more than high-ranked players. And regardless of what you think about Samito here, I actually think he's right, and I talked about this when the patch first came out. Sojourn still has great mobility and great burst. With the Mercy Pocket, she's still incredibly powerful, and even with all these nerfs, a lot of these nerfs are targeting the average value of the character. Think about removing the CC on the mini Graviton. That's not a change that affects high-ranked players more than low-ranked players. In fact, that value was given to low-ranked players a lot more than high-ranked players, simply because it was something that was easy to use and got you automatic value. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't have gotten changed. What I am saying is a lot of the changes that have been put in place is going to lower down the win rate of Sojourn even more for players outside of the highest rank, while not affecting players in the highest ranks all that much. And I think that before, if we just talk about the average rank, Sojourn was already fine, and now these nerfs are nerfing her more for average ranks without actually targeting the high rank meta tiers of play that were intended for the nerfs in the first place. So we're in a situation where Sojourn is still the strongest DPS at the highest ranks of play, or at least one of the top DPS at the highest ranks of play, and then for the mid to low ranks of play, Sojourn is heavily neutered to the point where she might not even be that playable. And we're still seeing this huge imbalance, even though Blizzard has multiple chances to have a specifically skill ceiling nerf target that just hasn't hit the mark. But maybe this is completely overblown and Sojourn's actually weak enough to not see play anywhere. But you tell me, how do you feel about this? Do you think Blizzard has balanced Sojourn right? Or do you think that they have been all over the place, not consistent, and not targeting the right things on the character? I want to hear your opinion in the comments down below. Next up, even though that Roadhog is not getting nerfed immediately, he will be losing his one-shot very soon down the pipeline. And then a little bit later, he's going to be receiving a soft rework. Now, I'm going to be honest, I can't imagine a Roadhog without the one-shot capability, and I would imagine that a ton of things need to change about the character, like more reliable damage, perhaps a hook that still can CC enemies or put them in a compromised position, although I'm still not entirely sure how I envision a Roadhog post-changes would go. Definitely let me know if you have any big ideas about what Roadhog would look like, but we're also in this really weird state right now where Roadhog is definitely dominant, but we know he's not going to be dominant forever, and then after they remove his one-shot before they rework him, he's going to be in a very awkward state that I feel like is just going to be unplayable. So yeah, definitely a bit strange, but I really want to hear your perception on Roadhog as a Roadhog player or someone who's getting farmed by Roadhog. How do you feel? Let me know in the comments down below. But if you enjoyed this news roundup, I need a huge, solid smash of that subscribe and like button and share it with a buddy if you want to get them caught up with Overwatch news. Thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.